What if I told you that some boxers stepped into the ring never knowing it would be their last fight? For every night of glory and championship triumphs, there are nights where tragedy strikes so suddenly that it leaves scars on the sport forever. From Patrick Day's devastating brain injury in 2019 to Maxim Dadashev collapsing backstage after one of the toughest fights of his life, the stories of these fighters are chilling reminders of boxing's brutal cost. This is not a highlight reel. This is not entertainment. This is the story of 20 boxers who lost their lives doing what they loved most, inside the squared circle. Let's begin with Patrick Day. Patrick was more than just a boxer. Born in Freeport, New York in 1992, he was the kind of fighter who represented discipline, respect, and passion. From his teenage years, Patrick showed promise, winning the prestigious New York Golden Gloves and even being chosen as an alternate for the 2012 U.S. Olympic team. Everyone who met him described him as thoughtful, humble, and intelligent, the kind of athlete who carried himself with dignity both inside and outside the ring. On October 12, 2019, Patrick entered the ring against rising star Charles Conwell. For Patrick, it was another step in a tough but respectable career. For Conwell, it was a test of his own skills. The fight started competitively, with Patrick showing his usual sharp boxing IQ, but by the later rounds, Conwell's punches were beginning to land harder and more frequently. Then came the 10th round. Conwell delivered a crushing combination. Patrick fell to the canvas, and this time, he didn't get back up. The arena grew quiet. Medical staff rushed into the ring as Patrick lay unconscious. He was taken to the hospital, where doctors discovered severe brain swelling. Despite emergency surgery, despite 4 days in a coma, Patrick Day passed away on October 16, 2019. He was just 27 years old. The boxing world was shaken. His opponent, Charles Conwell, was devastated. In an open letter to Patrick's family, he wrote words that broke everyone's hearts. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I never wanted this to happen to you." In that moment, fans were reminded that boxing is not a game. It is a sport where courage and danger walk hand in hand, and sometimes fate deals the cruelest blow. Now, let's move to another tragedy that stunned the sport just months earlier: Maxim Dadashev. Maxim, born in Russia in 1990, was widely considered one of the brightest prospects in boxing. He had a stellar amateur background and turned professional with all the tools needed to become a world champion. Known for his stamina, relentless pressure, and iron will, Maxim's rise was fast and full of promise. On July 19, 2019, he stepped into the ring to face Subriel Matias. It was a fight that drew attention, a showdown between two tough, unbeaten men. From the very beginning, it was a war. Both fighters traded punches at a furious pace. Round after round, Maxim pushed forward, refusing to step back. But as the fight wore on, the punishment accumulated. His trainer, Buddy McGirt, one of the sport's most respected coaches, could see the danger. By the 11th round, McGirt made the hardest call a trainer can make. He stopped the fight. He chose his fighter's life over pride. Maxim was helped out of the ring, exhausted but walking. Moments later, backstage, he collapsed. Doctors discovered extreme swelling of the brain. He underwent emergency surgery and was placed in a medically induced coma. For 4 days, he fought the hardest battle of his life. But on July 23, 2019, at just 28 years old, Maxim Dadashev passed away. His trainer, McGirt, was heartbroken. He later said, "I made the call to save him. I just wish it had been enough." His words captured the cruel reality of boxing. Sometimes, even the right decision comes too late. Not long before that, Argentina was mourning its own young star, Hugo Alfredo Santillan. But tragedies like these are not new to boxing. Decades earlier, in 1982, the sport witnessed one of its most infamous and heartbreaking moments with the death of Kim Duk-koo. Kim was a South Korean fighter who rose from poverty, using boxing not only to chase fame, but also to provide for his struggling family. He was tough, relentless, and driven by a willpower that inspired many. On November 13, 1982, Kim fought Ray Mancini in what was supposed to be the biggest fight of his career. The match was brutal, both men exchanging punishing blows. Mancini, known as Boom Boom, gradually took control. By the 14th round, Kim had taken an incredible amount of punishment. Then Mancini delivered a crushing combination that sent Kim collapsing to the canvas. He tried to rise, but his body wouldn't respond. He was rushed to the hospital, but doctors found devastating brain damage. Despite surgery, Kim died on November 17, 1982. His death shocked the boxing world. Fans, fighters, and officials were horrified. The incident was so impactful that it led to major rule changes in the sport. Title fights were reduced from 15 rounds to 12 in an effort to protect fighters. Kim's death was not just a tragedy, it was a turning point, one that forced the sport to confront its dangers head-on. 2 decades earlier, another fighter's tragic end had already shown the world the darkest side of boxing. His name was Benny "Kid" Parrott. Parrott, a Cuban welterweight champion, was known for his iron chin and aggressive style. His rivalry with Emil Griffith was one of the most heated in boxing history. But on March 24, 1962, when the two met for the third time, their feud reached its fatal end. Before the fight, Parrott had insulted Griffith personally, using words that many believe enraged Griffith beyond measure. Once the fight began, the two men traded blows. But by the 12th round, Griffith unleashed a vicious barrage. Dozens of unanswered punches rained down on Parrott as he lay trapped against the ropes. The referee hesitated, failing to step in quickly enough. Parrott slumped unconscious, his body battered beyond recovery. He was rushed to the hospital but never woke up. After 10 days in a coma, Benny Parrott died on April 3, 1962. His death raised questions not just about the referee's role, but about boxing itself. Could a sport built on such violence ever truly be safe? Just 1 year later, the boxing world was mourning again. This time, the death of featherweight champion Davey Moore. Moore, an American fighter, was admired for his speed, power, and determination. On March 21, 1963, he defended his title against Cuban slugger Sugar Ramos. The fight was thrilling, with both men trading heavy shots. But in the 10th round, Ramos landed a devastating combination that sent Moore crashing into the ropes. His head snapped violently, but Moore, showing incredible toughness, stayed on his feet and even finished the fight. What no one knew was that the damage had already been done. After the final bell, Moore returned to his dressing room, only to collapse. Doctors discovered severe brainstem damage. Despite their efforts, Moore never regained consciousness. He died 2 days later, at only 29 years old. His death caused outrage and sorrow. Politicians even debated whether boxing should be outlawed. Moore's tragic end became part of the ongoing conversation about whether the risks of the sport could ever be justified by its rewards. The 1980s also saw the heartbreaking death of Johnny Owen, known as the Merthyr Matchstick. Owen was a Welsh fighter beloved by fans for his toughness and determination. Though slender in build, he possessed incredible stamina and a will that never broke. On September 19, 1980, he got his long-awaited title shot against Lupe Pintor for the WBC Bantamweight Championship. Owen fought bravely, using his speed and agility to outbox Pintor early on. But as the rounds wore on, Pintor's power began to take its toll. In the 12th round, Pintor landed a crushing right hand. Owen fell to the canvas, unconscious. He never recovered. After 7 weeks in a coma, Johnny Owen passed away on November 4, 1980, at only 24 years old. His hometown in Wales was devastated. Owen was more than just a fighter. He was a local hero. His story was a reminder that behind every boxer is a community that shares both their triumphs and their tragedies. Tragedy struck again in 1999 with the death of Randy Carver. Carver, an American fighter from Kansas City, had big dreams of becoming a world champion. He was undefeated, hardworking, and determined to prove himself. On September 12, 1999, he faced Kabari Salem in what was supposed to be another step toward bigger fights. The bout was competitive, but by the later rounds, Carver was taking more punishment. Then, in the 10th round, he suddenly collapsed in the ring. Medical staff rushed in. He was taken to the hospital, where doctors discovered severe brain swelling. 2 days later, on September 14, 1999, Randy Carver died. He was only 24. His death was another painful reminder that in boxing, youth, talent, and potential are never guarantees of safety. Then there was Beethoven, Scotland, a fighter remembered for his grit and determination. On June 26, 2001, Scotland faced George Jones in a light heavyweight contest. Scotland gave it everything he had, but in the 10th round, he was struck with a series of heavy punches that sent him to the canvas. He never got back up. Rushed to the hospital, doctors discovered catastrophic brain injuries. For 6 days, Scotland remained in a coma, fighting for his life. But on July 1, 2001, at only 26 years old, Beethoven, Scotland passed away. His death left fans and fighters heartbroken. Another example of how even the toughest warriors are vulnerable when they step into the ring. And in 2011, Russia was once again mourning one of its brightest boxing prospects, Roman Simakov. Simakov was seen as one of the sport's future stars, a fighter with skill, power, and an exciting style. On December 5, 2011, he faced Sergey Kovalev, who would later become a world champion. The fight was brutal. Simakov absorbed heavy punishment, but refused to quit. In the 7th round, Kovalev landed a devastating series of punches that floored Simakov. He lost consciousness and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors found severe brain swelling. For 3 days, Simakov lay in a coma, but the injuries were too great. On December 8, 2011, he passed away at just 27 years old. The tragedy haunted Sergey Kovalev, who later dedicated one of his title fights to Simakov's memory. Daniel Aguillon's story is one of youthful promise cut short far too soon. Aguillon, a Mexican boxer with immense talent, came from a nation known for producing some of the toughest fighters in the world. On October 15, 2008, he was given a chance to make his mark in a high-profile fight against Omar Chavez, the son of legendary Mexican champion Julio Cesar Chavez. For Aguillon, this was more than just another bout. It was an opportunity to show the boxing world what he could do under the brightest lights. The fight was hard-fought, with both men trading shots. But in the 12th round, tragedy struck. Aguillon was caught with a crushing punch that sent him collapsing in the ring. He never regained consciousness. Doctors discovered severe head trauma, and despite all efforts, his condition worsened. Just 2 days later, on October 17, 2008, Daniel Aguillon passed away at only 24 years old. For many fans in Mexico, his death was another harsh reminder that in boxing, every punch carries with it a risk that can change everything in a single instant. Another story that left the boxing world stunned was that of Pedro Alcazar, a promising young champion from Panama. Alcazar, nicknamed El Roquero, had the potential to become one of the greats. By 2002, he had already captured the WBO superflyweight title and was seen as a fighter with the skill, heart, and charisma to lead Panama's proud boxing tradition. On June 22, 2002, he defended his title against Mexican fighter Fernando Montiel. The fight was brutal, and Montiel's power proved too much. Alcazar lost in the 6th round. But what followed was even more shocking. After the fight, Alcazar passed his post-fight medical examination and seemed fine. He even went about his evening plans as usual. But the next morning, while preparing to leave Las Vegas, he suddenly collapsed. Doctors rushed him to the hospital, where they discovered massive brain trauma caused by the fight. He died later that day at just 24 years old. His death was particularly haunting because he had appeared healthy after the match, proving that sometimes the damage lingers unseen until it's too late. Sam Choi, a South Korean former WBC light flyweight champion, was another tragic figure. Known for his speed and fighting spirit, Choi had built a reputation as one of the most respected fighters in his division. Even in the later years of his career, he continued to climb into the ring, showing that age had not dimmed his determination. On December 25, 2007, Choi faced Heriberto Ruiz in what would be his final bout. Choi fought with heart and won the match, but immediately after his hand was raised in victory, he collapsed in the ring. The joy of triumph turned to horror as medical staff rushed to his aid. He was taken to the hospital, where doctors discovered devastating brain injuries. Despite their efforts, Choi passed away on January 2, 2008. The fact that he had won the fight made his death even more heartbreaking. For his fans in South Korea, Choi's passing was a devastating blow and raised serious concerns about fighter safety. At the end of the bout, Jacopucci was badly hurt, but still on his feet. Minutes later, in his dressing room, he collapsed. Doctors discovered a brain hemorrhage, and despite their efforts, Jacopucci died the following day. His death shocked Italy, where he was considered one of the nation's brightest boxing talents. It also reignited conversations about how easily a fighter could survive the final bell, but still pay the ultimate price later. Finally, there's the story of Brad Rohn, a fighter who symbolized grit, heart, and sacrifice. Rohn wasn't a world champion, and his record carried more losses than wins, but he was beloved by those who knew him for his determination and refusal to give up. On July 18, 2003, he stepped into the ring once again in Utah. During the fight, Rohn collapsed suddenly. Medical staff rushed in, but he had suffered a fatal cardiac arrest. What made his story even more heartbreaking was why he had taken the fight. That night, Brad Rohn wasn't fighting for glory, money, or fame. He was fighting to earn money to help care for his sick mother. In the end, he gave his life for the love of his family. His passing showed that boxing is not always about world titles. Sometimes it's about survival, sacrifice, and love. If you found these stories powerful, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video so that their memories are never forgotten. Boxing's history is built not only on champions, but also on the fallen warriors who remind us what true courage looks like.